Music, one of the most mentally disturbing things a narcissist can experience, is the slow breakdown of the story they built about who they are and what place they think they have in your life. This is not just a hit to their ego, it is a deep crack in their core identity. Narcissists do not live in reality the way most people do. They live inside a kind of mental play where they are always the main character, the center of everything, and everyone else is expected to orbit around them. But this personal story is very fragile. It only holds together as long as everyone else agrees to play the parts they were given. For a long time, you probably went along with it. Maybe you did not fully see what was happening, or maybe you felt trapped, but you stayed in it anyway. You explained yourself over and over, defended your good intentions, and tried desperately to be understood. You excused their behavior, pushed down your own needs, and tolerated their emotional chaos while hoping that one day they would finally change. But over time, something much more important changed inside you. The narcissist story depends completely on control, emotional control, mental control, and even control over what is considered true or false in the relationship. They rewrite the past whenever it serves them. They minimize your pain, exaggerate their own struggles, and twist logic until it becomes a weapon for power instead of a way to connect. Everything they do has one main goal: to keep the illusion alive that they are necessary, superior, and always in charge. But that illusion only lives if you keep feeding it. The moment you stop playing along, when you start seeing through the manipulation and respond with calm awareness instead of rage, the whole structure starts to fracture. It might not explode all at once, but the damage is huge because you are not just leaving physically, you are taking back your psychological agreement. For someone whose identity is built on other people's validation, your quiet distance feels like a threat to their basic survival. To them, this is not only rejection, it feels like betrayal. Your exit drags out into the open something they have tried very hard to hide even from themselves. The story they have been telling about who they are and how others see them is not real. That truth usually does not hit them in one clear moment. It seeps in slowly, covered by anger, fake indifference, or another round of blaming everyone else. Under all those defenses is a quiet fear that they may have been wrong about themselves the entire time. This connects to a deeper truth about identity and stories. As humans, we understand ourselves through the stories we tell about our lives, what we did, who we loved, and what we went through. But when those stories are rigid and built on fantasy instead of honesty, even a small crack can feel like total destruction. When you refuse to play the role they wrote for you, they are left alone on an empty stage. They might run to find someone new, put the same expectations on them, and try to rebuild the same pattern, but it never fully works. You were not just another extra in their script. You were someone who truly saw them, maybe more clearly than anyone else ever had. When the person who saw them so deeply walks away, they are forced to face something more painful than being alone. They are forced to see that the story itself was never real. The space you leave is not just emotional distance. It is a loss of direction. They no longer know who they are without the role they played in your life because your presence gave their false self something to lean on. Without you, the emptiness that was always there becomes impossible to avoid. This is when their grand illusion finally falls apart, not just because you left, but because you left without begging for their understanding or permission. You walked away with calm self-respect instead of bitterness. By doing that, you did not just end a relationship. You took apart a fantasy. This is why your silence is so powerful. It speaks a truth their ego cannot fight. In that quiet, the mask shatters, and they are left face to face with the one thing they fear most, who they are without you. Emotional distance might sound simple or even cold, but in a narcissistic relationship, it is a deeply radical act. Detachment is not a lack of feeling. It is control over your feelings. It begins when you stop reacting on autopilot. When your emotions can no longer be pulled, poked, or used against you, the narcissist understands that they no longer have a key to your inner world. That is the moment their control truly ends. Narcissists do not just crave your attention, they crave your emotional charge. They want your highs and lows, your anger, your tears, your confusion. Every reaction you hand them reassures them that they still matter. Even your pain tells them the bond is still alive. As long as you are emotionally hooked, they believe they can still shape the outcome. This is why your inner withdrawal shakes them so deeply. You are no longer easily set off. You are no longer chasing their approval. You stop bending yourself just to avoid the next blow up. You respond thoughtfully instead of reacting from panic. In doing that, you reclaim your own authority, something they were never meant to own. This is not about turning into stone or refusing to care. That would be emotional numbness, not growth. Real detachment is clear vision. You see the narcissist as they really are, not as who they pretended to be, and not as who you wished they would become. You stop pouring your empathy onto them and start watching them with calm honesty. Often this is when they try one last time to pull you back in. They may show up or suddenly deep and self-aware. This is rarely real change. It is a survival strategy. They are reacting to the loss of control because your detachment has flipped the power dynamic. You are no longer following their script. You may notice quiet attempts to get a rise out of you, small tests, guilt games, or emotional pressure. When none of it works, when you give no anger, no begging, no comforting reassurance, they are left with nothing. To them, this is terrifying because it proves that their control is not slipping, it is gone. This whole process is about becoming whole within yourself. When you detach, you step out of the pull of someone else's emotional disorder. You ground yourself in your own values. You take back the right to define what is real, what is okay, and what is no longer allowed. You stop feeding their need for importance with your own energy. This change does not need drama or revenge. It just needs steady self-respect. Indifference is the one response a narcissist cannot understand or beat. They do not know what to do with it. They cannot twist it. This is where your real growth starts. You stop moving based on them and start moving based on your own rhythm. Over time, they realize the version of you they once controlled is gone. You have outgrown the whole pattern. Your independence threatens them on a deep level. Not only your ability to live your life, but your inner calm and self-definition. That kind of strength shows them what they lack. Narcissists are not anchored inside themselves. Their self-worth depends on constant reflection from other people. Without that mirror, their false self crumbles, showing the deep insecurity and confusion underneath. When you become emotionally self-reliant, you stop holding up their distorted reality. You become living proof that their power was never real. You may hope that this truth finally pushes them to change, but more often it sends them into an internal collapse because an identity built on denial is very hard to rebuild. That is no longer your job. You have stepped into a new season of life, one built on intention instead of constant reaction. By removing the idea that they were the center of your world, you forced them to face the truth they have spent their life avoiding. They were never the source of your strength. You always were. Taking back your energy and building a life rooted in self-trust is your greatest win. The second you no longer need them to confirm your value is the moment they are left with their own emptiness. And that truth is something they can no longer outrun. When they no longer get a reaction out of you, they slip into a deep kind of mental panic. To really see this clearly, you need to understand that your emotional energy is what has been feeding their fake identity. Your rage, your tears, your endless explanations, all of it has been their fuel. When those emotional reactions stop, the narcissist starts to feel something close to inner starvation. For years, they trained you to react on cue. They pressed buttons, stirred up confusion, and counted on certain emotional responses from you. The moment that system fails, their sense of reality begins to shake. They do not see your silence as strength or healing. They see it as a direct challenge to their power. In their your calm is not neutral. It is dangerous. This is why the time right after you pull back is often the most intense and unstable. They start switching roles fast, the victim 1 minute, the attacker the next, then suddenly the sweet, loving person you first met. They are scrambling to find a version of themselves that still gets to you. Each role is an attempt to unlock an emotional reaction and suck you back into the pattern. This frantic push comes from a truth they cannot accept. If they cannot control how you feel, they lose control over who they are around you. A narcissist only feels strong when someone else feels smaller. When you stay steady and grounded, you stop reflecting their superiority back to them. The mirror you used to hold up goes blank. They look at you and find no proof of dominance. In that emptiness, they are forced to feel how fragile and insignificant they truly feel inside. To outrun that feeling, they usually step up their efforts. This is when gossip spreads wider, lies get bigger, and other people are pulled in as messengers or flying monkeys. They look for any crack, any sign that you still care enough to hurt. They believe pain equals connection. What they fail to see is that your withdrawal is not a silent game or a secret punishment. It is a full emotional exit. You have moved inward. Your heart is no longer sitting where they know how to reach it. One of the biggest internal shifts happens when you stop waiting for them to admit what they did. For a long time, your healing might have depended on the hope that they would finally get it. You may have believed that if you explained things more clearly or stayed patient just a little longer, something would break through. Letting go means seeing that this understanding is never coming and realizing you no longer need it to move forward. Your reality does not need their agreement to be true. When this truth settles in your body, their words lose their grip. Their insults sound hollow. Their praise feels fake. You start seeing their actions not as proof of your worth, but as a pattern coming from their damaged inner world. This insight becomes your armor. Gaslighting stops working because you believe your own memory again. You are no longer acting from inside their emotional story. You are watching it from the outside. And this shift from actor to observer is what finally pushes them out. They cannot operate without emotional access to you. As you keep going forward, the space that used to be filled with drama and doubt starts to open up. A new kind of quiet appears. This silence is not heavy or threatening like before. It is open and steady. It lets you hear yourself again. You start reconnecting with the parts of you that had to hide just to avoid setting them off. Your interests come back. Your opinions feel safe to share. You remember what it feels like to be with people who do not need you to shrink to feel big. The narcissist may still hover in the background, watching, waiting, hoping you will slip. But your steady choices protect you. Every day you practice consistency, you grow stronger, you stay anchored in your truth. Their reach fades. The most powerful result of your independence is that their manipulation stops landing. You are no longer searching outside yourself for safety or approval. You become your own emotional anchor. You learn how to create your own sense of steadiness. And to someone who survives by feeding on others, that level of independence feels blinding. When you stop expecting fairness from someone who cannot give it, something permanent shifts inside you. For years, you might have believed that logic, evidence, or patience would one day lead to accountability. You hoped they would eventually see the harm they said, but the turning point in healing is realizing that their refusal to understand is on purpose. It is not confusion. It is protection. Admitting the harm would destroy the fake image they live behind. That image means more to them than your pain, so they choose denial every single time. Once you really accept this, You stop waiting for apologies and start living again. You take back the authority to tell your story without their voice editing it. This takes deep acceptance. You stop expecting emotional adulthood from someone who does not operate with it. You begin to see that while you were reaching for closeness and honesty, they were chasing control and ownership. That realization hurts, but it also sets you free. When you stop expecting dysfunction to act like health, their behavior becomes predictable instead of personal. Provocations look like habits. Guilt trips look like scripts. You begin to recognize patterns instead of drowning in the feelings they create. By watching them with distance instead of open vulnerability, you step out of the emotional cage they built. Slowly, your energy comes back to you. In the past, so much of your mind was focused on reading their mood, calming their storms, or cleaning up emotional messes. Now that same energy becomes available for your own life. At first, the calm can feel strange. It may even feel like emptiness. That is only because your body is adjusting to life without constant stress and adrenaline. What you are feeling is peace. In this peace, you are free to find out who you are without being the caretaker, the scapegoat, or the target. You can look at the emotional wounds that made you vulnerable to their control, not to blame yourself, but to protect yourself moving forward. This self-awareness helps you avoid repeating the same pattern again. The narcissist may react to your peace with confusion or sudden rage. They cannot stand the thought that you are okay, maybe even happy, without them. They may try to break your quiet or show up acting like a completely changed person, but because you are grounded now, these tricks do not work. You are no longer scanning for proof of their growth. You are focused on your own well-being. Your life is no longer shaped around reacting to their storms. It becomes a reflection of your own values and choices. Choosing yourself ends the cycle of damage and starts the cycle of rebuilding. You are not defined by what they broke. You are defined by what you choose to restore. Moving from just surviving to actually growing means turning your attention inward. When the noise finally stops, the silence can feel uncomfortable. For so long, your identity existed as a response to their behavior. Now you have to decide who you are without pushing against them. This stage is about taking back your mind. It starts with noticing that the harsh voice in your head is not really yours. It was planted there. It is made of their fears, their judgments, and their projections. Healing means taking that voice apart, piece by piece. Every thought that says you are not enough has to be questioned. Every belief that makes you responsible for their actions has to be replaced with truth. As you heal, your sense of time shifts. In abuse, everything is urgent. You live in crisis mode, waiting for the next emotional hit. Now you can think ahead. You can picture a future. That might feel scary at first because your trust in your own judgment was damaged. Rebuilding that trust happens through small, steady actions. You make promises to yourself and you keep them. You hold your boundaries even when no one is there to test them. You start listening to your intuition again. That quiet inner voice you used to ignore becomes your guide. Every time you follow it, you repair the inner connection they tried to break. You are coming back to yourself slowly, steadily, and for good.